everybody, thank you so much for joining us for our very last fanfic read of the MotherKat Reads run. I'm hoping that we'll have some more adventures in the future, maybe interview some more authors, deep dive into some stories, but this particular adventure where I have read big chunks of crazy stories to recondition my voices, we are all better. So next Saturday will be the very last one of these Wednesday and Saturday runs, where we'll be reading original stories with guest stars and all sorts of excitement. But tonight we're going to be talking about the thing that makes fan fiction really, really special. There's something really magical about the unfinished journey, being part of the story in a way that really only fan fiction can give you. When we can interact with the story as it's read, when we can join the journey as the artist walks it, that's something that's really magical about fan work. One of my favourite fanfic stories is from the HCD fan fiction universe. Horizon Zero Dawn is a fantastic video game. And hello, Avienda. I was reading along with the story, and there were a couple of side characters. And I said in the comments, am I imagining a bit of tension between these guys? And we ended up, the story had this incredible side plot of this really quite lovely love story between these two career soldiers, because we got chatting about it in the comments, and the fact that you can interact with the story in that way, and the way the community interacts with stories means that the unfinished story, the work in progress, really gives us an insight into storytelling that I don't think any other medium has. So this particular episode, this swan song, is my love letter to fan fiction, the unfinished story. So we have stories that haven't even been published on AO3 yet that we get to read tonight. We've got stories from the Stranger Things universe, from the HellCheer fandom. We have stories from the Reylo fandom. We have Hunger Games stories, which is this is a new one for me to read on the stream. We've not done one of those before. Excuse me, my turmeric tea. So I am so excited. I do hope everyone can join us on Saturday, because what Nick's Comics is reading does involve a bit of choose your own adventure. So I do hope that you'll be joining us for that particular bit of magic. So, is everybody sitting comfortably? So we're going to start with my sweet loves with some Captain Swan, and this is called August, although I don't know whether it's going to stay called that. And I have in front of me I do not have in front of me an AO3 document. I have in front of me the magic that is a Google Doc, with all the little comments that get left on the side by the beta readers. The kind of, it's like mainlining fic. This is the real stuff. So I have the outline for the plot ahead, and I'm not going to spoil it for anybody. But yeah, this is. Excuse me for 1 second while I just get us all lined up. Begging pardon. So this is Winter Baby 89 with August. Emma is so ready to be done with this amusement park opening that Robin had roped her into for PR. Also, she can get on with her 2 days off, not having to worry about early hair and makeup calls, getting some extra time away from her clueless and pushy yet determined co-star that doesn't seem to understand the word no. Emma loves her role on Ruthless Thoughts. They're currently filming season 2 after an amazing reception of the first season. She wishes she could say she loves working with her co-star, Walsh Anderson, but with the success of their inaugural season and the perceived sexual tension from fans between their characters, Walsh has become more forward and more aggressive in his attempts to persuade her to go out with him. Something she'd vented to Ruby about when their filming breaks line up long enough for the two of them to get lunch together. Going back to here and now as her driver pulls the car to a stop at the entrance of Misthaven Amusement Park, she looks down at her phone one last time, noticing a text from Robin. She can't help rolling her eyes when she reads it. Robin: remember, Emma, no sarcastic answers. We want good attention from the upcoming season. No bad publicity or scandal resulting from your snark. Emma: yes, Dad. Good night. Rolling her eyes once more for good measure, she stows her phone in the clutch she brought with her. Bracing herself for a night of playing the media darling, Emma takes a deep breath and reaches for the door handle. As she makes her way out of the car, she looks to make sure there are no outfit snafus and proceeds straight to guest services to find her escort and do her meet and greet with the press. Gillian's absolutely exhausted from the latest shooting schedule. He's had a super early set call to time to shoot all week. This morning alone, he was on set hours before the sun had decided to rise. When he finally got his late lunch, Regina called to informing him she'd forgotten to tell him for weeks about signing him up for the amusement park opening tonight. He feels that getting the next 2 days off will be his reward for the craziness of the shooting schedule this week, and he plans not to get out of bed unless absolutely necessary. As soon as he's able to politely leave this glorified press the flesh, photo op with whoever knows what reporters and bloggers, well, that's exactly where he's heading. He asks Marco not to stray too far with the car so that he can make his timely exit as soon as he's capable. Once Marco's pulled the car to a complete stop, Killian reaches out for the car door handle and pats his pocket to make sure his phone is still there, so he can text Marco when the time is right. As he pulls on his sunglasses to beat the glare of the sun, he makes his way from the car to guest services. Walking up, Killian's pleasantly surprised to find that Emma Swan is here as well. Emma is an intriguing woman, one he's wished for some time to get to know more, but has been thwarted by their crazy schedules. He's noticed that his co-star Ruby has been seen in Emma's presence several times since shooting has reconvened for Emma's show and begun for theirs. In fairness, he'd like to be the one to get to enjoy Emma's company, but he's glad that at least she has someone to talk to, especially considering the heavy subject matter on both of their shows, Emma's show more so than in his show Blacklisted. Even though they're in the inaugural season and hoping for a continuance of this show, hence tonight's Press the Flesh event, Gillian had seen and acted in his fair share of difficult subjects, and the showrunners and writer make it clear if they do get more seasons, there'll be more of the same, or even heavier subject matter. As he approaches, Emma and the person she's talking to turn to greet him, and it may be just fanciful part of his brain that he imagines he sees an excited twinkle in Emma's eye when she sees him. Since they've never been properly introduced, Killian extends his hand, saying, "Good evening, lass. I'm Killian Jones." She takes his hand and shakes it, give him a small, bemused look. "Nice to meet you, Killian. I'm Emma Swan." Gillian lingers on the handshake as long as one could consider polite, maintaining eye contact before breaking off and turning to face the gentleman Emma was talking to when he walked up. "Gillian, this is Pete. He's to be our escort for this event." Gillian offers his hand for a handshake to the man as he says, "Nice to meet you, Pete." "Nice to meet you, Mr. Jones. As Miss Swan said, I'll be your escort for tonight's event. There'll be a short Q&A in the press tent, and then I'll escort you through to the park, which isn't officially open yet. So it'll just be employees and their families in the park while you and the press. We just want to make sure you guys have a good time when you're here. So don't focus on the press. They've been advised to keep their distance. Just get candid shots after the Q&A's over." "That seems straightforward enough to me. How about you, Swan?" "Yeah, that seems fair enough." He swears he sees a playful smile across Emma's lovely features as she responds to him, turning her body ever so slightly in his direction. He's relieved to find out that the park doesn't officially open until the next morning, so the only people he and Emma will have to deal with will be reporters, park employees, and families of employers. They'll be staring and intrusive questions, but not nearly as many as if the general populace was swarming all over them. Without comforting thought, Killian plasters on his most charming smile as he gestures toward the guide and asks Emma, "Shall we get this show on the road then, love?" "Lead the way, Pete." If Killian admires the way Emma's jeans hug her curves as she walks ahead of him to the press tent, that'll be his secret to keep. Killian realises that press forms are so much easier to deal with when he has the plucky and fiery Emma Swan next to him. It feels like the Q&A session passed with no time, and then they were being escorted out to the park at large. He's momentarily transfixed by the look of childlike joy that crosses Emma's face before she's able to school her features into the public figure and badass actress the world gets to see. Killian's intrigued by this other side to this woman that's taken root in his mind, and his thoughts maybe tonight will be his chance to get to know her better and see the real her. Trying to be the gentleman he always strives to be, and hoping to get another peek into Emma's head and heart, Killian looks at her and says, "Lady's choice, love. Lead the way." He's actually been having a good time getting to know the enigmatic Emma Swan. She has a childlike exuberance wanting to ride the few roller coasters they've got, but screams and clings to him the entire time. Disney and Universal, this place is not, unless they actually get some more rides and reasons for people to come. They aren't going to be in business for long. But at least I have good company while I'm here, Killian muses. The ride attendant, for her part, tries not to stare or linger as she checks to make sure his harness is locked securely, before moving on to make sure Emma's harness is secure as well, before they give the thumbs up to the guy at the panel to send them on their way. As they exit the most recent ride to see the photo, Killian's glad to see the press have finally left, meaning they should be able to leave soon. Which brings a pang to his chest, thinking about parting ways from Emma so soon after finally getting the chance to have a conversation with the lovely lass. Walking up to the kiosk and finding their photo on the monitors, he can't help the full-bodied laugh that erupts out of him, causing Emma to look up too, letting out her own laugh when she spots it. Killian immediately tells the attendant he wants 2 copies of the picture. Too bad the press have already left, love. I'll be sad they missed this masterpiece. Truly one of your best pictures to date. Killian's trying to stifle the continued laughter because, as funny as the face she's making is, the fact that she sought out his arm to hold on to makes a fuzzy feeling appear in his heart that he's not going to look too closely. Emma narrows her eyes at him with a look that would shrivel a lesser man than he. "You wouldn't dare, you ass!" Placing his right hand over his heart and lifting his left hand in the air as innocent a look as he can muster, Killian says, "Scout's honour, they'll never hear it from me, lass. But this will go on my mantle." "Your mantle? Really?" Killian can see Emma's shoulders relax and the frown line between her eyes fade away as she looks at him. He watches her eyes go from narrowed to confused, along with a tinge of something that he was hoping might be hope or longing. "Aye, so I can remember the fun we had today." "I can't stay mad at you when you say sappy stuff like that." The booth worker chuckled to himself as he waited for the photos to print. When they were finished, he handed them to Killian. "Oh, thank you, lad. Word to the wise. Go ahead and delete any copies you have of that picture now that we have ours." Killian raises an eyebrow as he stares down the young man on the other side of the counter. "That will be now, son, while we're here to see it." The booth worker turns back to the computer, hitting some keys. After a few moments, he turns back around, stating, "All deleted, sir. You two have the only copies in existence." "Thank you, lad. Have a good night." Killian offers Emma his elbow. "What say you to finding Pete?" "That sounds like a plan." The two find their guide waiting for them right by the exit to the ride, willing to show them whatever their hearts desire. "I think I have it in me for one more ride. How about you, Killian?" "Aye, I think I could ride another. Do you have a certain one in mind, love?" "What about a tilt-a-whirl?" "You heard the lady, Pete. Lead the way, please." As they make their way across to the final ride, Killian pulls his phone out of his pocket to send a quick text to Marco to let him know to be at the entrance, where he dropped him off earlier in about 5 minutes. When he finishes sending the text, Killian glances at Emma, noticing that she seems to be deep in thought. As they climb into their personal car for a tilt-a-whirl, he inquires, "Penny for your thoughts, love?" Emma startles, almost embarrassed that she was caught. Did he really mean it? putting a red picture on your mantle. Go big or go home, right? Killian thinks to himself. Lowering his voice as he raises his eyebrow, he asks, Why, Miss Swan, are you angling for an invitation to my home to make sure I'm true to my word? What if I am? Oh, really now? You continue to surprise me, Swan. So I don't know if you're intrigued by that, but I know I am. I've read some of what's coming. This is a secret dating fic. There's twists and turns, and it's a baby fic. I love baby fic. So I will be looking out for August. That's by Winter Baby 89 in the Captain Swan fandom. And I will stick it out on social media when the fic comes live, and I'll update the YouTube as well when we get a link for it. But there's no link as of yet. But isn't it great? Does anybody, because Winter Baby is actually currently in the doctor's office, so I cannot be here right now. Is there anything anybody would like me to feed back, other than it sounds like she's got a couple of converts? Sorry, my clacky feedbacky keyboard is a bit harsh on the ears of the stream, isn't it? Sorry. It certainly is an interesting start. And I do think it has a lovely flow. It's a really. I like the way they that it twists together, and there's a lot of the information there, and lovely foreshadowing that Walsh is going to be an absolute git, which is always a favourite. So we've got some HellCheer, we've got some Hunger Games, and we've got some Reylo. I've got one that I've got. Serafine's going to send me something, which could be almost anything, because we started talking about Remington Steele the other week, so I'm not sure what I'm going to get sent there. Very excited. Right. Sorry, I'm just trying to get. My ducks in a row. My ducks are not in a row. They have wandered off. I am going to read yours. I've been practicing. Part of the reason that I wasn't quite prepared was because I was pulling up my very favourite montage of the Peter Katniss love story so I could get the accents down. So I am going to read yours. Would you like it now? Because it's Watcher your one, isn't it, my love? So there are 11 chapters of this. We're not going to have all 11 chapters. I think because I'm not sure how familiar people are with the universe, that we will start with chapter 1. But this is, dangerously addictive, this one. So I'm hoping we'll get your juices flowing. A sacrifice needs to be made. A volunteer steps forward. Peter meets Katniss, and she is not what he expected, and this alternate Panem as they move forward to change their world. Evelak Panem EU. There's a really great author's note here. So there's a super mean Mrs. Malark. Let's go to the tags. So probably it's a bit there's some there's some child abuse in this first chapter, so just be aware. I mean, he's not technically a child at this point, but yeah. Ask you again what? Yeah, it's just at first. Yeah, there's just a little bit. It's beautifully written, so you'll see in a second. But it's just, if that's a trigger for you, just be aware that this is quite realistically written. Yeah, that's a baby. I'm old. My eldest is 24 in like 3 days. So 5 days. I'm bad at math. 10 days, in fact. Oh my God. Yes. So 16 is a baby. Take him to the watcher. Maybe she can figure out something to do with him. His mother snarls as she throws him out the door of the bakery. He looks up in time to see his father standing behind her, wringing his hands like an old woman would while a crowd gathers behind him. Mayor Undersea steps forward to help Peter to his feet. Are you sure about this, Mrs. Mullark? She still has to make her choice, whether someone volunteers or not. His mother almost spits when she says, she is. Shell says that's part of the story. Mrs. Mullark is a witch. And that 16 is a baby, which is. Sorry, but it is. If you're 16, you should not be here. It's not for you. Do you not understand me? He's a useless boy who can hardly take the bread out of the oven, even when his brothers have to help him, or he'll drop the loaves because of his worthless leg. Take him to your house. Leave him in the community house. Let the monster in the woods have him. I don't care. I don't want him anymore. Peter stumbles against the mayor. His automatic steps forward to help him. She whispers, I'll go get your cane in a minute, okay? He shakes his head. She'll punish you. I'll be all right, he mutters back. His mother screams again, and they both look up to see his father pushing past her. In Mr. Mullark's hands, he carries the cane he carved for his son just last month to replace the old one he outgrew. He gives it to Peter, unable to look in his eyes. Madge lets go when he finds his footing. He tries not to look back at his mother when he does. She's gone. The empty doorway gapes open, like the hole in his heart. He glances up, and there in their bedroom window is Bram and Rye. Bram wrestles the window open, and Rye leans out, mouthing the words, Is she gone? He nods, knowing that she mustn't come back, and won't. Not until the crowd behind him's gone. Rye disappears, and Madge murmurs, What are they doing? When he hushes her, the bundle that he recognises as his pillowcase comes flying down. He manages to catch it with one arm. Bram leans back out. Madge whispers, while his lips are forming, I'll bring your paints over tonight. Peter nods at his brothers, and they quickly disappear. Is it okay if I come to your house? He meekly asks Madge. It's her father who answers. Of course it is. The choosing isn't for a couple of days yet. You can stay with us until it's over. Then he trails off, not knowing what to say. The mayor takes a deep breath and says to the people surrounding them, The boy's fine now. Go back to your work and your homes. Turns back to Madge and Peter, glances at the bakery door and sighs. Peter, can you make bread? Peter swallows hard and his voice is shaky. Yes, sir, Mother. He starts again. Yes, sir, I can make any loaf you want. Mr. Undersea nods and gives a tired smile. Good. You need to teach my cook, because it'll be a cold day in hell before I go back to that shop. Scene change. You know it's your turn to choose this year, he says behind her. She doesn't even turn around, but keeps walking to our lake. Yes, I know. Are you going to keep them or eat them? He stops on the path and scowls at him over her shoulder. We don't eat them. ever. At least I don't throw them in the ocean to see how long they can swim. He smacks. It was that one Brad. I still can't believe I chose him. That was over 500 years ago. You can let it go now. She grins and rolls her eyes. Never. I will never let you forget. When are you going to choose it? They are male and female, just like we are. I think they're expecting my mockingjay in a couple of days. Why don't you go and pick it up? She doesn't bother correcting him again, knowing that he's teasing her like he usually does. She glances down at her natural appearance. You know, I'm not what they expect. It's better to stay hidden here in this district. He clears his throat. Well, just don't forget to tell Father you accepted the sacrifice so he can tell the Titan. I know. Before she can say anything else, they hear the bells ringing, signaling that another one of them needs help. Her brother closes his eyes and presses his fingertips to his temple while his eyes drift shut. He nods once and says out loud, Yes, little sister, I'll be there as soon as the rain soak blows me there. He pauses for a moment. I'll tell her. He opens his eyes and glances back at her. As always, he forgets the connection she has with the youngest of them. She's attending the sick in the village and needs your cool rains to come and ease their suffering. He gives her a smirk and dives into her lake on his way to their sister. After watching him for a moment, she gets chill and hugs herself, all of a sudden feeling very alone. She hears familiar chirping and smiles. Her faithful companion lands on her shoulder. Come along, Aurora Fox. You have a choosing to get ready for. Scene change. I thought it was. Was the voice okay? Shell says, that's Katniss and Finnick. Oh. So I thought the Finnick voice was okay. Keen, not keen. I was trying to take, because so when we have Katniss in the films, we have she's very young, but she's very soft. It's a bit tricky because actually Katniss and Peter sound incredibly similar. Their voices are really so Peter's like here a bit big, but Katniss is a bit softer. But the voices are incredibly similar. Like if you close your eyes and just listen, it's genuinely difficult to pick out who's who. I think that's a really... So Shell says, I left the first chapter vague so you'd meet her family when Peter does. And I think that's lovely. I think that's a really great framing choice. They are from the same district, but it's... Because, I mean, he's not really a grown-up. Whereas, obviously, AFAB humans develop a little bit faster. Her voice is actually deeper than his in the first film, which is absolutely fine when you've got the kind of visual pointer that, on the screen, but it's a bit harder to hear. And they actually, they play into it a little bit with the audiobook. It's quite interesting. They actually make Peter's voice considerably higher than Katniss for the first half. And as she kind of gets back in touch with her emotions and he grows up a bit, they even out, and then it's quite nicely done. But yeah, I'll get back to reading the story now and start talking about the vagaries of voice acting and things that intrigue me. Peter, sit down, dear. Mrs. Undersea motions toward the chair beside Madge. He's only seen her a couple of times in his short 16 years, and he's struck by how beautiful she is. Pale blonde hair frames her face, and kind, dark blue eyes look at him with kindness he isn't used to. Thank you. Can I get you anything before I sit down. She shakes her head. I think I have everything. She unfolds her napkin, laying it across her lap. Peter and Madge both copy her. Mr. Undersea had some business in the seam, but I feel a headache coming. Maybe if we eat, that will help. He picks up his spoon and gingerly brings some soup to his mouth. The rich flavours of the butternut squash explode in his mouth. He doesn't realise that he moans out loud until Madge giggles beside him. His face explodes in embarrassment and Mrs. Undersea smiles. I'll tell cook you liked your soup. He nods. Then he has the horrid thought that he'd better enjoy the soup because his days could be numbered. The Undersea ladies jump in surprise when his spoon clangs against the ceramic bowl. He mutters, sorry about that. Neither Madge or her mother say anything while he tells himself to eat as much as he can. He might need his strength if Watcher chooses him. He gingerly picks his spoon back up, tries to finish the bowl of soup without his tears falling into it. Scene change. Why don't you come with me, Peter? It'd be good to hang out with everyone. Peter doesn't say anything, instead continues to look out the window at the people he went to school with before he hurt his leg. Her mother wouldn't let him go anymore. He was about to say no when he sees Bram at the edge of the small crowd. Peter grabs his cane and turns to Madge with a nervous nod and a shaky breath. He says, all right, let's go. Madge goes on before him, and not for the first time he wonders if she's forgotten that he can't keep up with her, especially on stairs. She does stop at the bottom before him. It's the beginning of summer, so they don't need their coats. Besides, the witch wouldn't give him his to him anyway. He follows Madge to the kitchen door. She goes out on the small courtyard behind the mayoral house. The townspeople at various times of day meet here. The older ones claim it in the mornings, meeting there to exchange gossip. The families claim it around noon, as they rush from shop to shop running their errands. When the dusk comes, that's when some of the youngest gather. A courtship, then a wedding has been planned among these old flagstones. Peter knows these people. These are the ones to come in to buy the bread his mother said he couldn't make. He even sees some of the foremost from the seam. He snorts at the irony. If they only knew how many of the merchants are as poor as they are. His leg is tired, so he has to lean heavily on his cane as he looks for Bram. Finally, he sees his brother standing off to the side, talking to their old friend Delly Cartwright. Delly sees him first and waves him over. Slowly, the crowd sees that it's him who Delly's waved at. Peter's face flushes red, and he wants nothing more than to run back inside as they all grow silent when he approaches them. Delly walks to him and says to the crowd around them, "It's just Peter." You know she'd never let him out because she was ashamed of him. She stops in front of him as the others start talking again. Delly throws her arms around his neck and whispers in his ear, "You can come to my house. You know Daddy won't care." He won't, but Mother will know. It's a bitter chuckle that escapes his mouth. Besides, the Watcher might want me after all. Delly pulls away and stops and says, "Stop him. It's bad enough that Bram talks about himself like he's nothing. I can't bear to hear you do it too." His heart tightens when he sees his best friend's eyes fill with tears. Watcher won't want you. The bird will choose someone else. He knows better than to try to explain how he feels. Bram interrupts his thoughts when he slaps him on the back and shoves a package into his hands. I hid your paints before she had a chance to destroy them. He doesn't have to ask what Bram means when he says it like that. Thank you. He wants to go back in, but he also wants to stay. When Rai comes up behind Bram, that makes up his mind. The Malak brothers, for the first time in their short years, together, even if it's just for an evening, finally feel safe enough to talk freely. No one notices the old beggar man sitting in the alley, watching them, or the fiery streak that crosses the night sky. Scene change. The next morning finds Peter waking before dawn. It takes him a moment to remember where he is and he doesn't have to be downstairs banging the fires before Mother gets downstairs. At first he rolls over, wanting to get some rest, but after years of his body getting up at the same time, he can't go back to sleep. Besides, his leg has been still for too long, and his muscles demand to be moved. He throws back the covers. While he stretches, he watches the sun chase away the darkness. Shell says at this time all they know is the Watcher is the thing in the woods that they have to sacrifice to every 7 years, and they have no idea what happens to the chosen fate that. I think, honestly, that the narrative speaks it. Thank you for kind of filling it in, but I genuinely think you've managed to kind of do the thing we always talk about and show it, not tell it, which is brilliant because there's so much world here. It's really well done. Honestly, it's really well done, Show. He's never been given this small luxury of his time, being his to do with it what he will. So he reaches for his paints. He gets lost in the hypnotic movement of his own brush, revealing to him the hidden picture on his page. He hears movement in the hallway, so he gets ready for what might be his last day in the village. He finally makes it downstairs and finds Madge waiting for him at the bottom of the stairs. "Oh, no, have you been waiting for me?" She smiles and he feels a little better. "No, well, yes, come on, Daddy's waiting for you." "Is everything okay?" he asks, trying not to let the familiar dread wash over him as she keeps pace with his hobble. She leaps her hand through his arm. "Yes, silly," she scolds him playfully as she leads him through the door to the dining room, where Mr. Undersea is seated with his newspapers scattered around him. The sight makes Peter pause, since he's never seen a newspaper up close. Madge tugs on his arm and then goes to her seat. The mayor looks at them and gives Peter the same friendly smile he did yesterday. "Come and sit, Madge. You can fix Peter a cup of tea, or would you like to try coffee?" He shakes his head, all of a sudden nervous for even accepting what he has. "Tea sounds great, sir." Peter watches him while Madge fetches both a plate and tea. Peter waits for Mr. Undersea to dig in before he starts. They eat in silence for a moment before the mayor says, "You know, you aren't going to be chosen tomorrow. How would you like a job?" Peter chokes and coughs for a moment. "Are you sure, sir?" "Cook's very impressed with the way you handled yourself in the kitchens yesterday. So you could go help her, or I know several jobs at the Justice Building. It's your choice, really." He looks down at his plate, not knowing what to say. Gives Mr. C a humble "thank you," knowing that the little mockingjay that comes out of the woods tomorrow may very well land on his head. It's Madge who says, "Oh, Peter, stop worrying about tomorrow. We don't know who she's going to choose. It could be anyone." She gives a bitter laugh. "Hell, it could be me." Mr. Undersea sits up straighter, and Peter doesn't miss the look he gives his daughter. Peter braces himself, waiting for the shouting, but instead the mayor says, "Now, Madge." "Well, it's true, Daddy. We don't know who the stupid little bird'll choose." Peter sets his fork down, his hunger gone. He wants to say something to comfort her, well, comfort himself too. Mr. Undersea instead sets his napkin down on the table and stands up. "It seems I've lost my appetite. Would you two like to join me?" Both of them stand. Madge walks around the table. After he has his cane, Peter brings up the rear. They follow the mayor to his library, and once Peter is in the room, Madge closes the door behind them. Mr. Undersea finds his seat, and Madge motions for him to sit beside her on one of the fancy chairs. Mr. Undersea sighs and opens his drawer, pulling out a packet of cigarettes. He takes one out and strikes his lighter. Before he can inhale, Madge says, "Now, Daddy, you know Mama doesn't like it when you smoke." The mayor watches them as he inhales, lighting up the cigarette. The sweet smell of tobacco fills the office, reminding Peter of his dad. After he exhales, he looks at the teen sitting in front of him. Instead of acknowledging what his daughter just said, he begins, "Once upon a time, Daddy, seriously, what are you doing? Madge asks, clearly annoyed. He flicks the ash into the ashtray. Once upon a time, your Aunt Macely. Madge interrupts him when she says, Dad. She grabs a tissue from the box on the desk. Peter watches her wipe her eyes and sighs. Okay, Dad, the only reason I'm sitting here is because Peter doesn't know. The mayor exhales and nods. Your Aunt Macely was chosen by the bird. Yes, it broke your mother's heart, but I've noticed something. Since I've been mayor, when it's this village's turn to offer a sacrifice, the bird never picks from a family it's picked from before. Oh, crap, Peter whispers. Madge grabs his hand. Think, Peter, has someone been chosen before in your family? He tries to smile, but his lips won't cooperate. Peter, the mayor asks, I'm thinking you had an uncle that was chosen when we were teenagers. He shrugs. Mother and father never said anything. Madge squeezes his hand. That's good, Peter. That's really good. I mean, if you had an uncle that was chosen, that is, it means you'll be safe. He glances at her, sees the hope in her eyes. A smile finds its way to her face. It's really good. Mr. Undersea sits back and snuffs out his cigarette. Well now, what are you two going to do today? Madge shrugs and says, I might do some errands for Mama. What about you, Peter? In his 16 years, he's never had a day to do with what he will. He wants to go to the one place he hasn't been since he was pulled from school. The meadow. I want to go to the meadow and paint. Scene change. With his paints and a packed lunch cook pressed into his hand and a borrowed knapsack, Peter leaves the mansion. He could go the short way that passed in front of the bakery, but after the scene yesterday, he sets off in the other direction. Soon he's walking through the scene part of town. He's never been through here before, and the artist part of him wants to capture the run-down houses, the children who are playing among them. He's used to being ignored, and now he's content to just watch. One little girl, who looks to be about 5, runs up to him. Hi, my name is Posy, and I'm playing with my brothers. She pauses to get a breath before she continues. And you can go and play too. What's in your bag, and why do you have a stick? He chuckles nervously. My name is Peter. I'm on my way to go and paint. Get back over here, Posy. A boy who's just a little bit bigger than Posy yells. He's too busy for you. He turns to the boy. Wait just a minute, Vic. He looks back to Peter. Bites her little lip. I gotta go. You come back. I want to see your paints. I can do that. Go and play. I'll see you later. He watches her skip back to the boy. She leaves him with a smile on his face. Continues on down the lane, his shuffle quickening when he sees the rolling green of the field. He pauses when he gets to the edge and just breathes. The grass almost reaches his knees, and the little yellow and blue wildflowers dance along with the breeze blowing through the forest, beckoning to him. It's all so beautiful, such a wonderful sight to his tired eyes. He hates to even walk through the meadow, so he staggers along the uneven ground right on the edge until he reaches the trees. When he spies the same rock he crawled on many years ago, his weak step speeds up. He sets down the knapsack, and while he looks for the changes that have taken place, he tries to rub the soreness out of his protesting muscles. He hums happily when he sees everything as it was, as if he'd never stopped visiting this spot. Renewed hope in his future makes the hop easy, and soon he's settled, sketching away. No one ever taught him to draw. But he starts with the trees first. Their shapes come through quickly, followed by the details. He glances up and meets another set of eyes hidden among the trees. His breath catches. He's so surprised that he drops his pencil in the dirt. He is unable to look away, mesmerized by flashes of silver. The eyes blink slowly. You feel their gaze raking over him, and he supposes that he should be afraid. Instead, there's a certain peace and curiosity. His eyes scan the bushes around the eyes, trying to make out whom or what is watching him. The eyes blink once, twice, and then the third time they're gone. Peter stares at the spot so long, trying, willing for them to come back so he can see them again. He isn't sure how long he sits there, but a little mockingjay flying by singing a sweet song startles him out of his trance. It's now his turn to blink fast, feeling lost, more lost than he's ever been before. He looks down at his paper, and even though he doesn't want to draw any more, he picks up his pencil and adds the silver eyes before he starts to cry at the loss of something wonderful. After sitting for a while thinking about everything but not really anything at all, he finally notices the sun has started its descent. As fast as his leg will allow, he eases himself up and gathers his stuff. He shoulders his bag and traces his footsteps back the way he came. He pauses at the end of the lane leading to the seam, looks for the children who are out playing. His heart falls a little when he doesn't see anyone, so he heads on to the merchant section of town. Peter! He looks up to see Deli headed for him. He waves back and she reaches for him, a little breathless. You need to come with me. She doesn't even wait for him to nod before she's dragging him toward the alley behind her parents' shoe store. Peter is not at all surprised to see Bram standing there. What he doesn't expect to see is their father standing behind his brother. Dad, what are you doing here? I was worried about you. I'm trying to get your mother to let you come back. No, Dad. Mr. Undersea offered me a job at the mansion or even at the Justice Building if I want it. You don't have to worry about me. Even he can hear the pride he's never noticed before in his voice. A job at the Justice Building? Bram asks. If you don't want that one, can I have it? That way Deli and I can go ahead. She interrupts him with a squeak and then a prompt slap of the arm. Then through gritted teeth she murmurs, Daddy said you can apprentice here. Mr. Mallock blinked at the young people surrounding him. Well, then I guess Rye will inherit the bakery. Peter and Bram exchanged a quizzical look. You sure about that, Dad? Bram starts. Peter asks, does Rye even want it? No matter. One of you must take it, and if the Watcher chooses one of you. Oh, that won't happen, Peter boasts. Why do you say that? Mr. Mallock asks. Mr. Mallock's face falls. Oh, no, a Mallock's never been chosen. I'm not sure why you heard that. I thought you... Bram stutters out. Deli grabs his arm. It'll be okay. It'll be okay. Watcher will choose someone else. Bram grabs her and pulls her into a hug that's so sweet and so sorrowful that Peter has to look away. His dad looks nervous for a moment before he throws his arms around Peter. It'll be okay, son. It'll be okay. So good. Like, just, I never got to give Kudos live on air before. That was neat, nifty. So yeah, just to remind you, that is our fic here. There are currently 10 more chapters than that. Stonkingly good. Really, really stonkingly good. So that is Watcher, and that's by our own lovely Shell, 235. Thank you very much. I am going to step away from the computer for just a brief moment, and then I will be back, and we will have some Reylo and some HellCheer, and it will all be lovely. So I will be back in about 5 minutes. It is so much. I love seeing the other things that are. Oh yeah, Avienda says love to hear from other fandoms. I do as well. I absolutely do. I've got another exclusive coming up as well. Oh my goodness. So, yeah, I'm very excited that we have another exclusive coming up. But I genuinely do need to pop away for just 5 minutes. So, bear with me. Be right back. Hey, thanks for holding on for me. I know I don't normally take a break on the shorter streams. It was sadly a little bit essential. So we have. Oh, I missed comment, Avianda. If I could just get my shit together and decide the order of my first 2 chapters of post-TFA, I failed to launch today. That's always tricky because sometimes it's fun to bounce around in time and stuff. I mean, yeah, can always be a good idea to work with beta readers and stuff for stuff like that. You never know who'd be about and be willing to brainstorm. Speaking of post-TFA, Stay With Me by Serafine is a TFA fix-it, a post-TFA fix-it. It rewrites the ending of The Rise of Skywalker and goes from there. So the excerpt that I've been given is from chapter 13. So it's when the Jedi Masters come and help Rey, it's a bit more personal. And then Ben brings her back, and then Rey, with the help of the Jedi Masters, brings Ben back. And then it goes on from there. There's trauma, and there's depression, and there's angst, and there's so much lust. So much lust. It's a really great fic. This is from chapter 13. So this is as like everything else on this story, this is a whip. So this is the link to the story. This is Stay With Me by Serafine, and we're going to have an excerpt from chapter 13. So this is Lando and Poe and Finn and Chewie kind of all digging in on Ben. It's an emotional scene, so get ready for your angst. Drawing in a deep breath, Ben said, "What else do you want to know?" Once again, his face was an expressionless mask, but his emotions were an open book to Rey. He was still rattled and angry, and she was surprised he wasn't physically bouncing with nervous energy. He wanted to get this initial meeting over with as quickly as possible. Poe answered, looking down at the data pad in his hand. "How about it?" Lando abruptly cut him off. "A way to track the absolution?" Every head in the room swiveled to stare at him. Ben nodded and blinked rapidly twice. "A good choice." Rey and Finn both felt sorrow and regret, and the flare of hot, burning shame. Lando continued, "I'm sure there are other questions Poe has, but that's really what I would like to know." Chewie made a mournful sound of agreement. "Last I knew, the ship was under the command of General Engel. She was gleeful upon hearing the offer of the Sith fleet. Tracking it would require access to the First Order computer. Was the Steadfast completely destroyed?" Finn supplied the answer. "Yeah, it went all the way down to the planet's surface, covered in flames. I doubt there's anything useful left." "What about the Supremacy? Have you tried to get into it yet?" "The First Order abandoned it over Crate. The computers were supposed to be scrubbed, but I'm sure a good slicer could find something useful. You could retrieve the rally point coordinates as well. I don't have the skills to do that, but I do have passcodes, assuming they haven't been erased. The Absolution would have no reason to change transponder codes, so they should still be the same." Poe tapped something into his datapad and asked, "Which generals might still be alive?" "I'm not certain exactly which ships went to Exegol beside the Steadfast, but surely Pride will have taken a few others. It's extremely unlikely he was the only one loyal to Palpatine among the generals. Pride's death is a serious blow to the First Order. He was ruthlessly efficient. He was also never remotely afraid of me, and now I know why. As for what leadership may remain," Ben began ticking off on his fingers. "Pride went down with the Steadfast, almost surely. Hux and Quinn are both dead. General Parnady would have likely gone with Pride as well. She was overseeing the operation on Kijimi." Poe visibly bristled. Well, Jimmy's not there anymore. Destroyed in a signal blast like the Hosnian system. Ben's mask slipped again and sadness played across his features. I'm sorry, I didn't know that. That would have definitely been done by the Sith fleet. The First Order doesn't have anything like that anymore. There are designs in progress, but nothing remotely functional. We are aware that each of the Sith fleet destroyers had planet-killing cannons on board. Poe took a deep breath and let it out, trying to calm down. Do you have any idea who would most likely try and take charge of the remains of the Order? There are several good candidates, provided they're still alive, but I think your best bet would be monitoring the rally points to see who shows up. Okay, another series of taps on the datapad. You said the First Order does not currently possess cannons that can destroy a planet with one blast, but they certainly did. Who exactly made the call to fire on the Hosnian system? Was it you? Ben glared, raising his voice, finally letting the defiant anger rippling through him escape. Are you really that dense stammerer? No, it wasn't me. Why the hell would I want to see the Hosnian system destroyed? How much time did I spend there as a child? There were other ways of dealing with the Republic that did not involve firing the ludicrous, unsustainable super weapon and murdering trillions of people. How long did I watch my mother grieve for her people? Populations can be subdued simply. It certainly doesn't require the destruction of planets, much less systems. The Alderaanian refugees gave the Empire nothing but trouble for years. The First Order should have learned from that, but they did not. Destroying the Hosnian system turned those killed into martyrs and anyone left into zealots. Was it Snoke? Who gave the order? Poe pressed again, almost yelling. Armitage Hux made the suggestion to Snoke, who promptly approved it despite my protests. Ben's hands clenched into tight fists, and Hux is the one who personally gave the order to fire. After a grandstanding speech to the troops, you certainly worked with him quickly enough when he started offering you information. Finn asks, you knew Hux was the spy? Ben's voice was much calmer. I received confirmation in a transmission from Pride about Hux just after I left the Steadfast for Kevbir. I had my suspicions about him for some time. Hux tried to lie to me. He motioned to Finn. As I'm sure you're aware, Force users can read people and sense deception. How long did he think I would be able to turn a blind eye? He hated me for years. Pride was useful for keeping him under control. Why am I being held responsible for decisions made by Snoke? I was the apprentice. He was the master, the supreme leader. He said with derision. A ridiculous title, Rey heard clearly in her head. And I stood up. How about we take a break, let tempers cool for a minute? Poe said, yeah, that's a good idea. Ben immediately stood up and stalked off quickly to the shadows, rolling his shoulders. Finn watched a variety of emotions play across Rey's face. Finally, she said to Poe, he's being truthful. I know you believe that. I don't think you would have given in, but I wanted to see his reaction to the question. And mine, Rey challenged him. You're still suspicious of me because of my bond with Ben, I know that. You knew this was going to be rough. You know there are things I have to ask. Just don't be mean about it. You're a better man than that. He headed away from the group toward Ben. Maybe I am, maybe I'm not, he muttered to himself. Poe sighed and set down his datapad. He rubbed his hands across his face, trying to wipe away some of the tension he was feeling. Standing up, he motioned to Finn, his expression still grim. He walked toward the door, Finn following after. So, is this all an act or what? Have you been able to get a read on him? Finn nodded. I almost hate to tell you this, but as far as I can tell, everything he is saying is absolutely true. He feels remarkably guilty about killing Han, all of it really. And he's been incredibly nervous since he walked in. He still has anger issues. Even I noticed that, Poe responded. There's no question about the bond she described. They're all tangled up. When you question Ray's loyalty, I thought he was going to snap. He's very protective of her, and there's still some dark side stuff there. He paused for a moment, considering how best to express it. But it's very small compared to his strength of his force signature as a whole. Given his actions, I'd be more surprised if there wasn't still a little darkness hanging around him, honestly. But Ray's right. This isn't the same person that tried to kill me on Starkiller Base. Not even close. Poe grimaced and scrubbed his hand through his hair. Shit, he hissed. What the hell do we do with him now? So, you'll be happy to know that there are about 7 more chapters after this available. So if you follow the link, it's so good. We have like so much good stuff today. So yeah, that is Stay With Me by Serafine. It is stonkingly good, and that courtroom scene, fucking bravo! It's just a brilliant courtroom scene. So yeah, as usual, please go and give love to our writers. So we have, I think we will have a bit of HellCheer, and then we will finish off with some more post-TFA. By our very own Aviander, because I think if I'm gonna cap off what has been an incredible adventure, and I do want to say thank you to every single one of you that has listened, contributed, joined in the chat. I do think if I'm going to cap it off, then it needs to be with something from Aviander69, who has been my friend and my cheerleader through the hell that has been the previous year, and all the way through my rehab. I was hoping we'd get some Green Umbrella on as well, but I haven't been able to get hold of her to get hold of anything from her. So I just, I want to. You'll just mean the world to me, and it's been hard. I don't know how many of you have ever had to rehab an injury. I've had to learn to walk again, and I don't think. I mean, it was a long time ago, but I don't think it was as hard as having to learn the tricks of my trade over again. So, thank you. We're going to have What's Inside a Girl by Princess Lindworm now. So this is a part 1 of 2. We do not have chapter 2 just yet. It is a HellCheer story. We have a lot of additional tags. To be clear, this is a HellCheer story, which means eating disorders are part of the canon. Disordered eating is part of this. Although this is Stranger Things, this is a Novecna story. So this is What's Inside a Girl, Princess Lindworm. It all started with a new pink pen she brought at Mevol's. Or maybe it started before, way back when Mrs. Click decided the best way to encourage everyone's participation in that class was a seat change. Not only separating friend groups like other teachers did, no, this was more than that. The students were divided into 2 rows, each one on opposite sides of the class, so they were all facing each other. Apparently this was going to make them want to debate in class. Their teacher wanted them to engage in deeper discussions, to share their thoughts, to talk. You have to talk, Miss Kelsey had said to Chrissy the first time she'd visited her guidance counsellor. It's important. For this to work, you have to be open. That sort of seat arrangement sounded like something Miss Kelly would do, not Mrs. Click. Chrissy couldn't stop thinking about it. She saw the 2 women talking sometimes in the hallways, wondered if they saw her too, if they'd talked about her, if this new arrangement was Mrs. Kelly's idea. It probably wasn't. It was too vain to think someone would do that just because of her. She had the weirdest thoughts sometimes. Really, that made no sense. She wasn't the only person, a quiet person in class, and even if she suspected she was the only one who saw the counsellor too often, there was no real reason to believe such a drastic change had anything to do with her. Still, it made her uneasy. "You're too sensitive, sweetheart," her mother said sometimes. I was probably right, but it wasn't just that. Chrissy didn't like debates. You couldn't smile and wait for them to pass, like when everyone looked at you during pep rally speeches or school award ceremonies. Debating was hard. Talking about important stuff, things that mattered, that was even harder. She never had anything smart or interesting to say. She couldn't come up with great ideas to back up her arguments. She was terrible at arguing with people. They just raise their tone or say something slightly mean, and she'd feel her voice getting shaky and small. It was really mortifying. That's why she never fought with her boyfriend, Jason. It was no use. She had ways of convincing him sometimes, mostly pleading and begging, but that was it. She just wasn't that kind of person. She didn't have the confidence or the strength or the brain. She was just Chrissy. She was plain and simple in everything. The only thing she had, the one thing she was good at, was cheerleading. That was only because she worked very, very hard. She had to. She had no talent at all. This year she'd been made cheer captain. Although she'd worked very hard for it and wanted to be happy about it, her mum had been so happy, so proud. Chrissy knew she wasn't fit for the job. Practice had become something she sort of dreaded rather than enjoyed, that she was now the one her teammates directly challenged and complained about when she corrected them or informed them of their coach's decisions. "Do you have someone you can confide in, Chrissy? Are you talking to someone besides me? Friends? Maybe your boyfriend?" Miss Kelly had asked her at some point. She had people. Definitely not her team, but she had friends and Jason, but she didn't talk to them about herself. Sure, she talked about movies and parties and new shops at the big mall, but not about things that worried her. She couldn't. Talking to Miss Kelly had been the last resort. For months, Chrissy had been having trouble sleeping, and concentrating it was worse than usual. Sleeping pills wouldn't help, and when she'd finally managed to get some sleep, she had terrible nightmares. She saw monsters who looked like her loved ones and sometimes herself, crying, desperately running, hanging from her bedroom ceiling. It was awful, terrifying. It was starting to affect her too much. It was ruining her life. She'd find herself spacing out in the middle of Jason's basketball games or during important exams. She'd see shadows that weren't there in her mirror. She'd feel her body tremble at the sound of a sewing machine. She was always tired. Sleepy, she had no energy to cheer or smile, and worse, she didn't have the energy to pretend everything was all right. So the school counsellor had been her only choice. Miss Kelly wouldn't tell anyone, that was her policy. Chrissy had heard it from Patrick, one of Jason's friends, when her boyfriend mentioned having too much on his plate this year. He had also been appointed captain of the team, although Jason was clearly in his element. He often complained about being too busy, mostly for going on dates with her, prioritising hanging out with his friends to build teamwork, and advising her to do the same with the cheerleaders. It was disappointing to Chrissy, but it made sense. Unlike her, Jason had always been goal-driven. He knew what he wanted and how to get it. In the end, he'd scoffed at Patrick's comment and assured him he didn't need Miss Kelly's counsel. But Chrissy did. She wasn't Jason. Of course, she didn't tell the guidance counsellor about everything, only what she thought was needed. Chrissy Cunningham wasn't someone who trusted others easily. She was easygoing and tried to be nice to everyone, but her most private thoughts and feelings, well, she kept those carefully hidden and out of reach, somewhere no one would find them. Deep inside her, it was for the best. When she was little, Chrissy realised that you had a secret. You shared a secret with someone. You'd instantly feel much closer to that person, a beautiful feeling, but beautiful things don't last. They aren't meant to be. Once the special moment's gone, the closeness will turn to just a memory, and memories are fragile. What someone strongly remembers, others might easily forget. She learnt this lesson thanks to her mom. Every time Chrissy had shared a secret curled into her mother's warm embrace, she'd felt safe, protected, close to her. And then suddenly, when she least expected it, the secret would transform into something sharp and painful that her mother would use against her. Laura Cunningham knew how to use her words like needles, and Chrissy had vowed she'd try to avoid getting hurt as much as she could. She wouldn't willingly prick her finger on the spinning wheel. She wouldn't give anyone that power over her. Not a single drop of blood, not the smallest part of herself. But something happened in Mrs. Click's class because of the new seating arrangement. In the beginning, it didn't seem to change anything. It certainly didn't make Chrissy talk more during discussions. She still barely said a word. She'd always been the type to sit quietly, bring her homework, only answer questions if she was asked. She wasn't an excellent student, but she wasn't terrible either. Teachers didn't need to pay her any special attention. She was normal. Exams were important to her, especially now in senior year. But cheerleading was and always had been her main priority. Practice came first to everything. Studying came after that, and then there was Jason. She kept busy focusing on those three things. She led a very simple, very normal life. Not at all exciting, but nice, mostly. And then it all started. The excitement, the closeness, the secrets. The day she dropped her new pink pen. She'd been so tired. It had rolled away from her hand on the floor. She tried to do her best not to fall asleep in class. Luckily, no one had noticed. Chrissy had been assigned a place on one of the furthest corners of the classroom, pretty far away from her friends and acquaintances. She sat next to a very studious girl called Brenda, whose only goal in class and maybe in life was to take notes. She had no interest in talking to her, barely lifted her eyes from her notebook. Sitting next to her, Chrissy felt like a ghost. Doing her best not to disrupt the class or call attention to herself, Chrissy tried to reach out for the pen, stretching her leg as much as she could to drag it toward her. It wasn't a very solid plan, so it took her a while bringing it closer. When she did, before she leaned to grab it, she looked straight ahead and was struck with a wild revelation. Eddie Munson, drug dealer, teacher's worst nightmare, rumoured worshipper of Satan, was looking at her. She gasped. He sat on the opposite side of the class facing her. But Chrissy had never once in her life spoken to him. She would have averted her eyes immediately if it wasn't for the fact that he wasn't looking into her eyes at all. He was looking at her, but not at what she was doing or the face she was making. Eddie Munson was intently staring at her open legs. Most likely at her pastel pink panties. She froze. Her pink pen was instantly forgotten in her desk. She stayed there, unmoving, her eyes fixed on the boy like his were glued to her underwear. And my God, this was terrible. It was awful of him to stare like that, rude, gross, bad. She should say something or do something. She should close her legs. She should do that. Close your legs, close your mouth. That's what her mother always said, what Chrissy always did. Except when Jason drove them to Lover's Lake after a date, and she had to open both for him. He was her boyfriend, her very first love, and although she wasn't willing to be open with him, she could at least give him what she always did. What was on the outside, not the inside. It was the only time her body wasn't a total disappointment, at least she hoped so. And Jason was important to her. He loved her, he told her. But Eddie Munson wasn't important. Wasn't her boyfriend. She didn't owe him anything. In fact, he must have thought very little of her, finding her boring and beneath his notice, since they'd never interacted before, and Eddie was, well, different from everyone. He was brash and really loud. He went on long rants in the middle of the school's cafeteria, or anywhere really, about how he was so much better than everybody else. He was mean and scary, and she thought of him as a bit of a bully with a big mouth. Chrissy tried to remain out of his way for the most part. Didn't want him to notice her existence and started picking on her like he did with the people from the basketball team or the school band. Luckily for her, it wasn't very difficult to avoid crossing paths with Eddie Munson. Their lives and interests were so far apart. They might live in entirely different worlds, but they lived in the same city and they went to the same high school and now even shared a classroom. And so right now he was in front of her, still staring at her panties. No. Chrissy closed her legs, the movement so brusque and quick she was sure he must have realised she caught him looking. With a nervous glance at Brenda to confirm she was still focusing on her notes and completely oblivious to what was going on, Chrissy felt her heart slow down a bit. She hadn't even noticed how fast it had been beating until now. She shouldn't look at Eddie again. She should wait for the moment to pass and forget about it, but something inside her was urging her to look up. The same thing that had made her force herself to purge out her breakfast this morning, an uncannily similar voice to her mom's, was whispering she deserved the humiliation, the smug, mocking look, or the wicked leer. You're a total pig, Chrissy, a slut. It would have been her fault. She should have closed her legs faster. She shouldn't have been sitting like that at all. So Chrissy lifted her eyes and looked at Eddie Munson. He wasn't looking at her, not at her legs, now pressed tightly together. Eddie was totally focused on Mrs. Click's lesson, which was weird. The few times she caught sight of him in class, he'd always been preoccupied with anything around him, except the words coming out of the teacher's mouth. The cheerleader frowned. He didn't exactly seem to be listening to Mrs. Click. His face was turned away from Chrissy, one cheek casually resting on the palm of his hand, and it would have been completely normal if it weren't for the fact that she could clearly see him covering his red face. She blinked. He looked embarrassed. She blinked again, processing this information. Eddie Munson was blushing. It was unexpected. It was absolutely not what she thought he'd look like when she lifted her eyes to him. Strangely, it was kind of cute. The thought made her smile to herself. Chrissy's inside joke. Yeah, she was dull Chrissy Cunningham, but she made one of the most dangerous-looking guys at school blush. She didn't even remember the last time she made Jason blush. It had been a long time ago. Unapologetic supersedior Eddie Munson, who was at least 2 years older, always smoked his mind and yelled at freshmen and teachers, did drug deals and listened to music that would terrify the entire choir at church, was now blushing in class. Because of her. Because she caught him staring at her. It filled her with something she wasn't used to feeling. Something powerful. Perhaps Eddie wasn't how she thought he was. It was obvious he wasn't like most of Hawkins High's population at all. He was the only one to repeat senior year twice. The only boy who had long hair. It was brown and frizzy, and Chrissy thought it suited him. It probably looked weird on otherwise, but it looked nice on Eddie. She didn't think she'd recognise him without it. Sensing her staring, he suddenly glanced at her. Chrissy still didn't look away, too busy studying him as if she was seeing him for the first time. He had big, very dark brown eyes. They looked almost black. She couldn't really read anything in them, and he quickly glanced away, batting long, pretty eyelashes as she did. Oh, she'd never noticed that about him either. She must have looked very silly, as Eddie's gaze returned to her, and now she detected a hint of surprise in it, and the way his eyebrows appeared to move behind his bangs. It was funny, he had bangs, just like her. Not very neatly trimmed, though, but a tiny, silly coincidence that almost made her laugh. Look, Eddie Munson and Chrissy Cunningham have something in common. Who knew? Eddie looked more surprised as the seconds passed, eyes clearly questioning her. Oh, she was acting so bizarre, staring at him and smiling like a fool, but it felt nice to look at someone instead of being the one looked at for once. Chrissy didn't look much at boys. She had a boyfriend, so she focused on Jason. The only other man she found herself watching were ones on movies or on TV, more from the land of fantasy than reality. This was very different. Very different from longingly gazing at a famous actor on the cover of a magazine or watching Jason during a basketball game. Eddie Munson was somehow fascinating to her right now, just by merely existing. What was that? Why was that? In front of her, Eddie also studied her intently, eyes fixed on her, as he started quietly tearing off a piece of paper from his notebook. What did he see? What did he think? She had no idea. Was he just seeing a boring cheerleader or someone else? Was he seeing her any differently? Was he seeing her? Chrissy. She felt her cheeks grow hot. His dark eyes only left hers when he started writing something on the paper. When he was suddenly done with their absurd exchange of looks, or was he trying to write something for her to read? What do you think, Mr. Munson? Mrs. Click's voice suddenly startled Chrissy. What? It startled Eddie too. A few students snickered. The poem, Mr. Munson. Do you think the author's trying to say... What do you think the author's trying to say with his use of colour? Eddie leaned in his seat, rhythmically tapping his pen and his hand against the desk. He turned his full attention to the teacher. No, Florence. His eyes briefly met the closed English book in front of him. But who knows, really? Who can accurately discern the intentions of genius? Can art be measured in... The poem, Mr. Munson. Let's focus on that. Well, if you ask me, he should have mentioned pink. Andy, one of Jason's friends from the basketball team, openly laughed from the opposite corner of the class, but Eddie ignored him. The soft pastel cotton, pink cotton candy type, you know? I think there should be more poetry about that. I'd love to see more of it myself. Some of their classmates laughed, not too unkindly. They must have thought him funny, but Chrissy didn't. Jesus. Pastel pink. She just turned completely pink herself. What was he talking about? Eddie met her eyes with a smile before continuing. Oh, he was. Oh my God. He was talking about her, or rather, about her panties. Her whole face was hot. She pressed her legs together again, this time even more tightly, perhaps too tightly. Oh God. I think you should include that. Maybe that's what he's missing. Dude's not too good at poetry, huh? Mrs. Click rolled her eyes. Is that right, Mr. Munson? Are you a poetry expert now? Not exactly, but I'm pretty sure if this was any good, we wouldn't feel the need to take a nap right now. The laughter got louder this time. Eddie held up two hands as if he meant no harm. Just my humble opinion, Florence. Very interesting, Mr. Munson. Thank you for your insight. The teacher turned to the other side of the classroom, looking like she wasn't being paid enough to deal with him. Miss Cunningham. Dread spread across Chrissy's chest. What did you think? He is, like, the author, I mean, surprising? Yeah, Eddie cut in, grinning. How exactly? Oh my God, what is he doing? He never talked to her. I didn't expect him to talk about colours. Chrissy tried to look straight at Mrs. Click as she spoke. Eddie's eyes on her were starting to make her look like a tomato. This was getting surreal very fast. I didn't expect him to use colours this way, she repeated, hoping she sounded convincing and mildly interesting to her teacher. Yeah, that's what I thought. So modern, right? One of her classmates, Rosie, interrupted her. Chrissy wasn't sure if it was because she was trying to save her from looking like a total idiot, or because she felt rather compelled to talk about the poem. It looked like the latter, by the way. She kept going on passionately, talking about it until everyone was interrupted by Tina, who felt the need to inform everyone that what colours were trendy this spring. Chrissy was grateful for poetry and fashion. Mrs. Click's attention was finally away from her. Eddie's attention, on the other hand, was still on her. He was looking at her with a smile that had her lightly rubbing legs together. Jesus, she was chewing on her lower lip. What was wrong with her? She sighed, trying to focus on a book, the poem. Where was the poem they'd been reading? She needed to focus on the class and forget everything else. Yes, she should do that. Chrissy slowly opened her legs without lifting her face from her book, and remained like that until the bell rang. The first 3 days after the incident, Chrissy had been very tense, her mind reeling with thoughts about what to say or do if Eddie Munson approached her, or if he told anyone about it. She was constantly checking if people were whispering behind her back, practically running out of the room. When she saw Eddie, she was ready for the worst. But the days passed, and he did nothing. He didn't talk to her. He didn't seem to have told anyone about it. It was like it never happened. Everything was the same as always. She wondered if he'd forgotten about it already. Felt very stupid for worrying about such a little moment and very long week. Must have been no consequence to him. He'd never paid any attention to her before, and some pink panties weren't going to change that. He must have been seeing plenty of panties on a weekly basis anyway. Chrissy didn't think he had a girlfriend, but clearly girls had to like him. There was nothing special about her underwear or herself, or a little eye contact between them in class, and that was great. That meant she didn't have to worry. So why did she feel a tiny bit disappointed? Well, she really was disgusting sometimes. After a whole week went by, she was convinced Eddie Munson didn't think about her at all, which was fine, except for the fact she saw him everywhere. How could she have missed him before? He was literally everywhere, and he was too eye-catching. He was not only in her English, but also history and chemistry, and a lot more classes than she realised, and his seat was always relatively close to hers. It made her heart flutter inside her chest in a strange way. She started shyly glancing at him at first, but slowly she began to allow herself to look at him more, and noticed him smile at her if they met in the hallway, or gazing at her amongst the sea of students in the high school's entrance, and somehow it didn't feel new. She had an odd feeling, as if all that didn't have anything to do with what happened in English class. When he smiled at her, it wasn't a smirk, it was just a smile. Surprisingly, he had a very pretty smile, as if he just pleased to see her. It made her smile back. It made her think that perhaps he had always smiled at her. It was only now she was beginning to take notice. Once, when she was walking with one of the cheerleaders, Melissa's books gathered against her chest for biology, they stumbled upon Eddie and some of his club friends. They were heatedly discussing something about a meeting, maybe, and unknowingly blocking one of the hallways. Melissa cleared her throat. Excuse me?" she pointedly said. "Oh, hey, sorry." A short boy with curly hair moved, making way for them. Eddie's lips curled in a little smile when he spotted her, and Chrissy's heart did a silly pirouette. "Ladies," he said, inviting them to continue on their way with an extended arm. Her friend rolled her eyes at him and quickened her pace, while Chrissy gave him a coy smile. As she passed him, Eddie caught one of the ends of her pink ribbon between his fingers, giving it the tiniest tug, and winked at her. Chrissy blinked and flushed red, hurrying after Melissa. Her heart was doing an extremely enthusiastic cheer routine now. The other cheerleader studied her face and scowled. "What did he do?" "What? You're red. Did he say some shit to you?" "No, of course. It was nothing." "Oh, he's a creep. You should tell Jason." Chrissy shook her head. "Nothing happened. Really, he's nice." "Nice? Eddie Munson, you don't be naive, Chrissy. There's only one reason for him to be nice to you." Chrissy said nothing to this, but later, almost 2 weeks after the first time during English class, she was sitting again, with her legs open further than she'd normally do. She was so nervous she couldn't concentrate on anything Mrs. Click was saying. Was he looking? She did glance at him, her skin flushed again. He was, staring at her, staring between her legs. Chrissy gulped, shifted in her seat a bit. Part of her knew she was doing something bad. That cruel, nagging voice that sounded like her mom was ready to whisper in her ear. But there was another voice too, growing louder. She kept convincing herself she wasn't really doing anything. She was just sitting with her legs a bit apart. It wasn't weird. If they'd been at the pool, Eddie and anyone else could have seen much more of her. Would have been perfectly normal. Here in class, she was wearing all her clothes. She wasn't in a bikini. You barely got to see anything more than some white piece of cloth with pink roses and a bit of her thighs. It wasn't that bad. It wasn't weird at all if you thought about it like that. It was better than the pool. There was something she didn't like about it. It was having to bare herself for everyone to look. This was different. Here she decided how much and for how long he could see. She called the shots in a way she didn't do anywhere else. Not in her house, not with Jason, or even with the team. Besides, she'd technically also seen his underwear. She'd noticed it peeking from his jeans when he jumped up and down the tables in the cafeteria. Blue checkered boxes. It made her giggle. Not that she ever expected this time either. It was cute. Eddie Munson was very, very, very cute. It was so strange to think. Strange to think that she'd ever thought of him as scary. He looked kind of goofy to her nowadays. He was still loud and opinionated, and she saw him sneering at people and terrorising freshmen in the cafeteria, but despite that, those freshmen were always around him. Was wearing those adorable matching t-shirts from their club. They were like uniforms for the basketball team or the cheer squad. However, she suspected the school didn't provide those. Had Eddie and the boys made them? Wasn't that sweet? They had a cute little red demon as a logo that she supposed was meant to look frightening, but the thought of Eddie Munson carefully drawing all that and making t-shirts with a bunch of kids. She'd even seen a cute little girl from her brother's class hanging around the club in the evenings. It had her heart melting. Oh, he was just so cute and fun and certainly alluring. It's been going on for a couple of weeks. Chrissy Cunningham is now spending most of her allowance on cute lingerie. She doesn't remember the last time buying clothes for herself had been so exciting. To be honest, it's never exactly been this kind of exciting. It feels different, fun. She loves buying them with the knowledge that someone besides her is going to see them. She's never actually been the only one, of course. Her mom does the laundry, and Jason's seen some of them. But it doesn't matter much. He's never been interested, not like Eddie. Her boyfriend's interest in panties starts and ends with sliding them down to have sex. It bothers her a bit now when they hook up. It also saddens her a bit that showing her panties to a stranger, a boy from her class who she hasn't exchanged more than 4 words with whilst moving around the school, feels much more special than going on a date with her boyfriend. It should tell her something. It tells her something. She chooses to ignore it. Because maybe it isn't Jason's fault, maybe it's hers, maybe she is... the awful voice in her head provides. She tries to ignore this too. What she can't ignore is the way Eddie studies her panties. He probably has no idea what Mrs. Click is teaching them, but Chrissy's sure he could easily get a perfect score on a test about her underwear. Sometimes just the feel of his heated gaze on the thin cloth between her legs almost feels like someone's actually touching her. Right there. It's a bit torturous sitting in front of him, being unable to press her legs together, watching and see him licking his lips like a starved wolf. It's entertaining to watch too, the way he rubs his palm over his thigh, up and down, completely focused on her. Oh, and she sees him grip his knee tightly, sometimes both knees, as if he didn't know what to do with his hands. She guesses he knows exactly what to do with them. It's just that he can't. They're in a classroom. Another good thing is that she started wearing a lot of miniskirts lately. Chrissy's never felt exactly confident in them. She wasn't a big fan of the short length of her cheering uniform. But now she finds them extremely practical, and she's starting to think that maybe her legs don't look that terrible in them if it makes Eddie still look at her the way he does. She even takes off her cheer shorts on Fridays before she heads to Mrs. O'Donnell's class. She changed seats with a very understanding boy named Terry now, so she sits closer to Eddie, also in history. She has to concentrate very hard not to laugh, as he cranes his neck constantly to look at her, and she rides up her skirt, only enough for him to see the tiniest little part of what's underneath. He never seems to get enough of her panties. Maybe of her. She guesses that's normal since he can't see her, well, her panties, outside of class. They never see each other around Hawkins, not even on the weekends. She has no idea what Eddie Munson does in his free time besides his club activities, which she still doesn't fully understand even when she's looked up D&D books in the library. And he drives that maniac in that old van. But of course, they still have English class together. It's the one she anticipates the most. Her heart beats like crazy before stepping inside the classroom. And it's not because she dreads the teacher's attempts at making them discuss the latest read. It's because of Eddie Munson and his haunting eyes. She can't get enough of them. Of how sometimes they find hers across the room. Of how they look dark, hazy, filled with a particular kind of hunger that makes her think he doesn't only notice her panties, but also the wetness on them. It's again in Mrs. Click's class when everything changes once more. Cressy notices him slightly shifting in his seat, his hips up, looking a bit desperately at her. She frowns confused. Does he want her to do that? Show him a bit more. Eddie blushes when their eyes meet. Isn't he so cute? So charming, so full of that special charm no other boy in town has. But he abruptly looks down at his notebook instead of her. Chrissy's frown deepens at this. She's wearing pink panties with baby blue polka dots and regretting it a bit. Maybe those aren't very sexy. She tries to catch Eddie's eyes for a while, but he continues to look at his notebook with a blank face. Right in the middle of Fred Benson's sarcastic rant about some poor writer from the last century, Eddie interrupts him without asking, more like announcing, telling Mrs. Click he's going to the bathroom. Eddie tells him to enjoy it since he doesn't have a real one at home because he's trailer trash, and asks him if that's why he hasn't graduated yet. It makes most of the students laugh while Mrs. Click threatens the basketball player with detention. Chrissy learns two things after this. First, that Eddie must live in Forest Hills, and second, that she dislikes Andy more than she already did. Dislike probably doesn't even begin to cover it. He's the only friend of Jason's that she can't tolerate. But Eddie doesn't seem too bothered by it, since he just leaves the classroom without anyone noticing. It doesn't take too long for him to return, long enough to make her think he must be upset because of Andy's rude comment, or that he doesn't want to have to sit in front of her and humour anymore. And that's why, when he finally comes back, she can't stop beaming at him, ready to resume their strange routine, but Eddie still doesn't look at her at all. Has she done something wrong? Does he hate polka dots, or maybe he got really bored of all this? And that's where she goes making everything about her again. It probably doesn't have anything to do with her. He must definitely feel bad because of Andy. What he said was so cruel. Worried, Chrissy crosses an invisible line. She takes a little piece of paper and writes a note, just 3 words. Are you okay? His response lands on Brenda's table, but the girl just dismisses it and gives it to her without a word. Chrissy feels her cheeks turn hot. Maybe Brenda isn't as focused on her notes as she thought. In any case, she seems uninterested in her or Eddie. And Chrissy can't worry about anything else right now. She needs to see what he wrote. Yeah, sorry. There's something crossed off that she can't read right next to it, and right below that he's added, "You're beautiful." She reads again the last part. "You're beautiful." It really says you. He means her. Eddie Munson thinks she's beautiful. She boldly writes to him again. Favourite colour? His note lands on her desk now. On you, every one of them. Chrissy tries to stifle a giggle and glances at him. Eddie tilts his head a bit, a shameless smile on his face. She takes her pink pen again to reply. "It's fine if you want to ask for anything in particular," she writes. She's curious about his favourite among her brand new collection of underwear. He studies this note for a long time, so long that the bell rings. Chrissy has never disliked a sound so much. She gets up and starts gathering all her stuff slowly, but he's going to talk to her now, right? He'll definitely approach her today, right? Oh my god. Her heart is pounding so loud she can feel it in every part of her body. But she now has everything she needs in her backpack, and there's no sign of Eddie. She frowns. Her friend Vicky, already at the door, calls for her, and Chrissy nods. She glances behind her, trying to catch sight of him before leaving, feeling like Pandora, since every little peek at him feels like she could unleash chaos on the whole school. Eddie's talking to Chad. Strange, she didn't think they were friends. By the time she reaches Vicky, she's heavily frowning. "Chrissy? Oh, sorry, you have calculus too, right?" "Yeah. Is everything okay?" Yeah, sorry, I feel like homework just keeps piling up these days." "Oh yeah, I know. I can't wait for Chad's party. I need to forget about all this for a couple of hours at least. I really want to hang out with Dan. We can't see much of each other lately." "Oh, the party. It strikes, and then, of course, Eddie Munson still sells drugs. He does a lot of other stuff besides sitting in class waiting for some cheerleader to let him take a peek at her unsexy panties. She needs to keep busy too, focus on other stuff. She's been thinking about all this too much. Why did she write to him? They never talk, and that's been working fine. They shared a little secret, something harmless enough to keep them both safe, something no one else would ever believe. Now she's burst the bubble, and it could get... You're beautiful." Chrissy sighs. She can't regret it, even if it can only end in disappointment. At the end of the day, something drops from her locker when she opens it. A folded little piece of paper. Eddie. Her heart sinks. Strawberries. Please, please, please. E.M. She stares at the note for a bit. They're doing this, talking. It's not just looks and glances and smiles and things they can imagine that are there or aren't there. This is wrong. Now that they're talking, it feels different, too real. But she started it. She totally started it both times. She's the one that needs to stop this. What are they even doing? She needs to ignore the note and sit with their legs closed and stop her eyes from searching for Eddie Munson. That's the reasonable thing to do. She's had a bit of excitement and that's enough. She can't do this to Jason, and she looks at the note again. This is weird. She tells herself filthy, her mind adds. This guy doesn't even know, sounds obsessed with her underwear. God, he Jesus, she can't even think about it. Was he, and before, when he left the classroom, oh. She shouldn't keep up this game or whatever this thing is between them. She needs to forget the whole thing. This weekend, Chrissy goes to Chad's party and holds the same untouched plastic cup for a few hours, pretending to take sips from time to time. She talks to Vicky and a few cheerleaders before they leave with their boyfriends for more entertaining people. She watches Jason talking to everyone as if they were all celebrating him and forces herself to smile. When he glances at her before some guy from his team demands attention, she doesn't demand anything, doesn't ask for anything. She can't complain about anything. Everyone is nice, no one's rude to her. This life should be fun. She should be having fun, but parties always make her feel lonely. I'm going to stop there. That's not the whole chapter, but I do want to go and just finish off this evening with a little something from Avienda. So that was What's Inside a Girl by Princess Lindworm. Again, here's the link. If you've enjoyed a story, it's clever, isn't it? It could have been it could have felt cheap, but it's not. It's quite clever. It's really well done. But yeah, do pop in. You can finish the chapter. It's waiting on another chapter. It was updated in December. Yeah, you can really feel that there's a lot going on with both of those people. Yeah, Avienda, I absolutely agree that it was beautiful and smart, and the pain is very real. But yeah, do go, kudos them, comment, and yeah, I love for her that she's taking that little bit of power for herself, and that it's a struggle, but she's taking it. Oh, begging pardon, I'm not in any way bored by you. It's late here, and I'm a little bit worn out. So our last little treat today is by our very own Avienda 69. And this is the title of this is Untitled Post-TFA Missing Scene Whip, which is like 90% of the titles in my whip folder. I don't know about you guys. But I think this is going to be, you're going to enjoy this. It's just the only additional text here, I think, like missing scene. There's nothing dangerous here. So yeah, this is Force Awakens missing scene. He saw her slip away between the trees. Snow fell on his face, stinging where it melted into the wound she'd burned into him. I failed. Kylo Ren fell back in the snow, looking at the night sky. He heard an echo in his mind. Ben! Angry and demanding. The ground shook underneath him, and fearful. Something terrible is happening to this planet, he thought. He felt his wounds. The slash to his face extended all the way down his chest. His right shoulder burned. His side throbbed, bleeding out. Chewie killed me. I should be dead. But the Wookiee hadn't killed him. Lights flashed in the distance. Moving nearer, a transport appeared, landed. Troops ran out. He heard Captain Phasma's low, growling voice. "There he is! Get him! Be careful, idiots! He looks wounded." "No! Let me die!" Rough hands grabbed him, carried him half walking, half running to the little ship. He bit his lips to not cry out, feeling as if the wound in his side was tearing and splitting him in half. Finally, darkness engulfed him. Ray. Chewie cried nearly the whole way back to Dakar. When they got there, went straight to some small old woman who gathered him in her arms and cried with him, while people made space for the pair. Ray watched for a few seconds before helping the medics bring Finn out of the Millennium Falcon's improvised med bay, and she watched them carry him inside what must be the fabled Resistance headquarters camp. She stayed under the Falcon's wing and stood, waiting. After a breath, Chewie turned back to look at her, said a word to the woman with him, and the latter looked at Ray a moment before waving her over. She wiped tears while Ray walked toward her. "Chewie here says you help with the destruction of the Death planet, whatever." "I did, but I had no idea what was happening. I'm Ray." She stuck out her hand in greeting. The woman looked at it for a moment, as if in a daze, before taking it for a warm second. "I'm Leia Organa Solo." The woman tripped on the last name, and Ray gaped at her. "I'm the commander of the Resistance. Welcome to our ranks, if you want to join us." Ray realized she was gaping at Senator Leia Organa, the other hero of the rebellion. She closed her mouth. "Organa Solo. I'm sorry about your husband, Mom," she blurted. "We couldn't do anything. I don't know why he went out there, why he confronted Kylo Ren." She spat the name out, "like that. Ben Solo is our son." Ray stood silent, stunned. Chewie looked at his friend and back to her. "You keep that to yourself," he growled, before the pair of heroes turned and walked away. "Han Solo can't save you." Kylo Ren had spat at her. He couldn't save Kylo Ren either. Ben Solo? Is he dead? She wondered. What a terrible blow, to lose both a husband and a son in the same moment. Someone came to get her, a young woman who introduced herself as Rose Tycho. As they walked to where the troop barracks were, she spoke in a high-fluted voice. It took a moment before Ray focused on what she was saying. "Where you can get the fresh air? There's the mess hall by the way. Supper isn't coming for a couple of hours, but you can always grab a snack. Welcome to the Resistance." As Ray washed the day's horrible events from her body, they played in her mind. She tried to make sense of them. Something struck out to her. She had a flash of a frightened boy. She closed her eyes and washed her face in the water, fresh, flowing water, but the memory stayed vivid, like a spot on her mind and her heart, and somehow she knew Kylo Ren is not dead. She was called to testify before Chewie and Leia as soon as she was out of the fresh air. A tall golden protocol droid was there, apparently to record the exchange. No one else was with them in the little office. Chewbacca told me some of what you told him on the way here. Captain Dameron, you haven't met him yet? Told me about the interrogation chair. You managed to free yourself from that contraption you were strapped into. Leia asked, point blank. "I did. I'm not sure how. I told the guard to free me and he did. Then I met up with Chewie and the others." Rey told the story of the confrontation between Han and Kylo Ren, not quite believing the link between them. When she mentioned Chewie shooting the Darksider, the Wookiee whined a long time, shaking his head. "It's all right, Chewie, I understand," Leia told him. "You thought to maim him. I might have done the same." And now Rey was on to the only part she knew, the improbable duel she'd won. "He found us. He was wounded, but somehow still willing to fight. I could feel something feeding his anger. He hurt Finn, and then he came after me." In her mind, she could see how the fight went. There had been many fights on Jakku. Some tried to rob her, some to kill her, some tried to capture her. Kylo had tried to capture her again. The lightsaber, it had chosen her. Kylo had tried to compel her again. You need a teacher. Rey had found the Force, then rage. He was wounded. I don't know how I managed to beat him, but I did. She saw him again lying in the snow, disfigured, bewildered. The ground had split between them before she could kill him. She would not have missed. Then I ran to find Finn, and Chewie found us. She fell silent, looking at her feet. The older woman turned to Chewie. "You say Ben singled out this girl and carried her to his ship?" The woman nodded before adding, "Yeah, she's unusual." "That kind of unusual, you mean?" The Wookiee grunted in assent. I turned back to her. "We're sending you to Luke Skywalker's coordinates. Speak with him, tell him we need him. Bring him back. Chewie will go with you." "Me? But I'm nobody." "Maybe you are, maybe you're not. Luke will know for sure." Leia turned away. "There's something else," Rey blurted out before she could stop herself. The older woman stared before she turned back to the scavenger girl, who blushed in embarrassment. She stared at her expectantly, eyes shiny, holding her breath. I think he's alive." Rey didn't say who she thought he was. She wasn't sure who the tall, dark, menacing man was, but she didn't have to name him. She saw in the other woman's face that she knew who he was. Leia sighed and nodded. "I know. Thanks for confirming it. Now go." She didn't get a chance to speak to many people as they got the ship stocked and ready for the voyage. Rose came by again, bringing her fresh clothes she thought might fit her. Rey thanked her before walking up the gangplank. Before they closed it, a droid rolled in. Chewie greeted him. "See, Luke," it beeped. "Friend." "All right," said Rey. "One or more won't hurt." She looked more closely at the droid. "You read my vision." "What vision?" The droid inclined its whole body to get a better scan of her. I had a vision when I first touched this." She reached inside her trusty pack, brought the lightsaber out and showed it to the droid. The thing still felt heavy, but now it also felt warm. "Anakin." The droid sighed and then rolled away. Rey looked at it a moment more, puzzled but too respectful to press it for answers. "Anakin," she whispered. She heard the name before and then she remembered. Anakin Skywalker. Luke Skywalker's father, just like Maz Kanata had told her. She stared at the silvery hilt in her hand. The Galactic Civil War. She had vague memories of the history of the ships she'd virtually trained on, using the flight simulator she'd hacked onto her Hellhound transport back home on Jakku. The last battle had happened over Jakku, 20 years before she was stranded there. Before that, the Clone Wars. General Skywalker was a hero of the Clone Wars, like his son in the war against the Empire. Rey gasped. Another memory surfaced from 6 years ago. A terrible year. She'd been sitting at Nima Outpost canteen when the news had spread like wildfire. Darth Vader, the old Emperor's Sith apprentice and enforcer, was Anakin Skywalker, the father of Luke and of Leia Organa. The lightsaber had belonged to Darth Vader. She nearly dropped the thing, but managed to put it down on the galley counter instead. It calls to you, Maskanata had exclaimed, and she had a flash of Kylo Ren in the falling snow, weakened by his wounds, brown eyes blown wide, bewildered and hurt at the same time. She looked at the droid, who appeared to be reminiscing, docked into its charging station. Chewie hollered, "I need a co-pilot," and she hurried to join him. Now it was Chewie's turn to grumble and swear at the updates on the Millennium Falcon. Rey looked at the green fields surrounding the resistance base as they lifted off. She almost wanted to jump off the ship before it got too high, but it seemed like she had a bigger role than she could imagine. "You thought you'd just be a mechanic, did you?" the hairy pilot told her when they made the black. Then he fell silent. They sat for a while, looking through the cockpit port to the stars without. Dakar glowed brightly, just to the starboard side. "All right, punch in the coordinates. We're getting him back." Something in Chewie's tone made Rey unsure who "him" meant. She watched the stars streak as they made the jump. The view turned into the pattern of blue and white that was becoming familiar to her. Chewie grunted and stumbled out of the cockpit, and she heard him sob on his way to his quarters, grief still fresh. Kylo Ren is Leia and Han Solo's son. When did he stop being Ben Solo? One student turned on Luke, destroyed the temple, Han had said. He hadn't told her it was his own son. Luke felt responsible and walked away from the whole thing. What happened? She shook her head. I have to concentrate on what I will tell Luke Skywalker to bring him back with us. It's none of my business what happened between him and his nephew. The situation was awful. Twisted. I'm just a scavenger, she whispered, willing herself to believe it. Avianda, how do you do that with your words? So there's more of that chapter, and you're going to go and read it and comment and say nice things, because it's lush. But seriously, do that thing. How do you do that with your words? I'm just utterly twisted up. I can't get. I have watched that film and I have read the book, and that feels so entirely correct. Just so good. So, comments and kudos. Give us some love. And that's it. Thank you very much. Assuming I don't end up with bronchial pneumonia again. We will have our originals episode on Saturday, and yeah, I've got a couple of ideas for. I might do a deep dive, insight on an author type thing going forward. So my surgery was last week. I am patched up. It turned out that the knobble on my liver was a little bit bigger than we thought it was going to be, so I'm a bit shattered. But yeah, the intubation didn't do any damage. Thank you. Yes. I actually managed to do myself a little bit of damage today, because I feel so much better than I did before when I was ill. That I pushed it a little bit harder than I should 8 days out of surgery. So no, honestly, I'm so much better than I have been, and I'm really looking forward to getting back to recording. So the first piece of recording I'm going to do, well, I've got still, there's just a tiny little bit of a burr left. So I'm going to get Triad recorded while I can still get the Phasma voice bang on. So that'll be, once I've got that done, I'm going to get Triad recorded. Yeah, so yes, that's the plan. Next comic should still be on Saturday. We got it. We were nearly there, and then my monitor fell on me, and we couldn't get the damn thing to go live. So we've got the tech working now, so we should be, touch wood, going live. And she do try and get on, if everyone can get on to the stream bang on for 10 o'clock, because the thing that Next Comics is going to read for you is a choose your own adventure. So everybody's going to need to come and pick the pathways. It's really cool. It should be just a lot of fun. And if you haven't, yeah, it is really good. But yeah, if you haven't got it yet, obviously, she has a new book out under her pseudonym. So do go and buy the books. Like, just buy everybody's books. So yeah, we have a secret scene. We have an expanded alternate perspective scene from Avian 69 for Home is Where the Heart Is, and that is a gut wrencher. Bring your hankies. We have just so much incredible stuff. We have Peanut, I think it's called. We have a unreleased work, which is by Pop Writer X, which is an absolutely stonking alternate universe time travel story with Errol Flynn in it. I'll get my Poe practice on. I'll know how terrible I have to treat myself to watching the Moth Guy book. But yeah, I'm really excited for the original special, and then I will be back and I'll be recording. And yeah, so thank you so much for joining me on this journey, all of you. It's been incredible getting to read your work. It's been incredible getting to share this time with you. We didn't quite make it to affiliate status, but that's probably for the best. It's probably for the best. We're still doing this for a laugh. But I can't thank you all enough for just this has been. I was very stressed out about rehab, and this has been the most fun way I could possibly think of to rehab. So thank you all so much, and I look forward to giving you polished, finished versions of your stories with sound effects and files you can upload. So, bless and good night. MKR signing out.